Welcome back once again. I'm Brad, this is Gavin and Jared. We're here with Wartorn Creative. We're going through everything that we know so far and speculations and thoughts on Warhammer 40k 8th edition as it is coming up pretty quick. So one more thing that we know about right now is the fight subphase. Wow, that was better than my charge intro.
I'm just saying,
that was pretty good.
Get into the fight.
So, you know what? Now I'm totally thrown off. You guys get to start this one off. So fight subphase, let's go in more depth about it. What are some changes we see? Let's start off with getting dragged into combat.
So, and this goes into when a unit gets to do its swings, it gets a free 3-inch move to move in closer to the opponent. That doesn't necessarily say pile in, but it just as long as you move closer to the opponent, to the unit you're engaged in combat with. Now, so with that, in combining with the conjunction of that 1-inch rule, you can position yourself in a way around, say, a model that you're still ending yourself closer to that unit, but at the same time, you're putting yourself within an inch of another unit, which then immediately engages them in combat.
And they missed out on their Overwatch.
Yes, they cannot Overwatch in the fight phase.
So like we were saying during the charge phase, there is this risk reward as far as placement goes, because you may get an an additional unit firing Overwatch to defend your units. Mm-hmm. But if you don't place it, if you're not playing smart, you may get pulled into a mulcher, essentially, into a fight phase that you had no intention of being in there and had no means of defending yourself from the charge.
And this brings up a lot of conjectures of like whether people were bringing up like, oh, does that mean like when the final, like is there going to be a final pile-in or a consolidation? And people are like, can you consolidate into an inch of another unit? You know, and we don't really know. But some people are speculating that yes, you can. Other people are saying like, no, that's crazy, because consolidating into another combat would be really strong.
So now with there being multiple units like that, currently if there's multiple units, you have to pick, you know, if you have 20 guys fighting, you know, 2 groups of 5, let's say, you have to say, I want these guys to shoot at this unit, these guys to shoot at that unit. Do you think it's going to stay like that? Do you think that now with these kind of like 1-inch rule and 3-inch rule, that it's going to allow you to carry stuff over to multiple units?
Yeah, it's very likely. Like if you ran like the traditional like guardsman or Tau gun line, where like you had like 10 mans of fire warriors just along an aegis, you charge one block, and then as you're fighting, you're piling in a way that still keeps you closer, but also starts engaging other units. Yeah. So you could have this domino effect of just completely disabling a line, because now they're forced to, that gun line is forced to fall back or in order to get out. Right. But now that you have an additional unit engaged in that, both units have to fall back, and that's less shooting or less actions from those 2 units instead of just one.
But I do like that we do have this tool now to deal with this situation where if we get pulled in, if we did have a gun line and we got a charge that we weren't expecting or anticipating, and we get pulled into that, we now have the ability, if we didn't take too many wounds on that extra group that got pulled in, we can be like, all right, well, you know, this is a bust, I'm taking off. And we have the tools, so it's great because we have our assaulters have been given more tools to pull more things in combat, possibly even chaining combats, which could be a new thing that we get to deal with. I mean, I know Gene Stealers are going to be just going apeshit over this stuff, and but we also have the tools to get out of there if it's looking like you might just mulch through 5 units in a gun line.
And in that same token, like falling back is beneficial for the shooter, but it's also, if done right, it's beneficial for the guy assaulting, because if he can engage more than 1 unit, he's effectively reduced the firepower or ability of more units being able to really do anything in their turn.
So now charging happens, fight subphase happens. So what happens within that now versus, you know, if it's your turn, you're always attacking first or / initiative steps are going
So now
first.
that initiative's out the window, and the consolidation prize for that, for everybody, is that, and this is a big reward for assault armies and assault units, is that those who charge, those who get a successful charge, get to attack first, and the order in which everybody attacks is in a I go, then you go, which is an alternating. This is in Age of Sigmar, which has actually worked really well. People have really enjoyed it because there's some depth there. But effectively, the order is this: is that all units that successfully charged that you were able to get a charge off on, they all get to resolve their attacks first. And let's break that down for a second. When a unit gets to attack, when it's their turn to be activated, unit activation, they resolve all of their attacks. This includes just regular fists and punches and gun butts and things like that, or even power weapons like power fists,
thunder hammers,
So
all the things we'd used to see at the end of combat.
you
So
no
like
longer-
even like a Wraith Knight, where it's like you're going to get Hammer of Wrath, you're going to get a sword swing,
Yeah,
you're going to get stomps.
yeah.
If all that exists,
Those
that's all
happen
happening.
during that unit's activation in the fight phase. So
Or even a really good example of that would actually be Call, who has an initiative step, in 7th edition has an initiative step 10 set of attacks, and then he has a weapon that can attack at initiative step 4, his standard initiative, or he could choose to swing with his axe at initiative step 1. I imagine we're likely going to see all of those things ping off all at the same time. If it is as close to Age of Sigmar as it's showing to be, we may see a lot of multi-weapon models being able to attack with both weapons as well,
And
which is super exciting for anyone that is a Chaos Lord rolling a Lightning Claw and a
And
Power Fist, because God, if those guys weren't killy enough already, here they come, smacking at you with both.
I'm just glad my knobs can actually hit. They get their chance before they get wiped out or challenged out,
Right.
which we don't even know if that's going to be a thing. They didn't even talk about challenges.
I imagine we may even get that in the next
Like,
upcoming days.
yeah, they're probably going to release like a character thing.
Yeah.
So go back to like everything, all the attacks happen.
Back to units and how they activate. Every unit that charged that turn, that player turn, gets to go first. Whether it was if counter charges are even going to be a thing, we don't know. That may be an interesting mechanic to see. But say I got all my charges off. I had 2 charges. So those 2 units that charged immediately get to do all of their attacks. I just activate one, resolve all of the attacks that they can do in the fight phase, and then activate this one over here and resolve any of the attacks that unit can do. And remember, I'm saying unit, not combats, because combats aren't really a thing anymore. It's a fight where individual units are resolving their things in that order.
Okay.
And then after that, after all the charges, the charging units have done their attacks, we immediately segue into a I go, then you go, which I believe we've talked about. We've come to establish that it is by the dictation of the current active player's turn.
Well, we don't know that for certain. They haven't said, but it's likely. I know that a lot of tournament players, at least when they're resolving who rolls first at the same initiative step in 7th edition, they always defer to the active player. We may see something like that. We'll see how that goes when Games Workshop clarifies that later.
But okay. And going to that point, it's an alternating activation, where one player gets to activate any of his units that are engaged in a fight, resolve all their attacks, and then the other player gets to do that. And it's a very simple I go, you go format, but there's a lot of depth.
There's a lot of depth to it.
A lot of
which
depth.
allows for some really, really fun. You can really, if you're a charging smart, you can create situations where even in a I go, you go scenario in the next turn, they're going to be in an opportunity where they're like, okay, well, I really need this to attack. However, if this doesn't attack, it's going to die.
Yep.
And if you create those situations for your opponent, you're going to be in a really good situation. And it's going to be really fun to find those positions to put your opponent in. It just adds a new layer of tactics that have always been kind of in a very mild manner in the game. And now we've just kind of blown it wide open and had this kind of like very sub part of the game blown into a whole kind of, deep mini game essentially.
And because of that, you're going to have this level of thought process where for the defending player, their mindset is crap. These charging units all got to do their stuff. I need to figure out what my order is going to be in order to mitigate the damage output. Because say like I have two 10-man tactical squads, like maybe there's a power fist in each. My opponent had their assault squad charge one, and then like a Thunderhammer Storm Shield squad charge the other. When it comes to active, if this was just in a basic, say they was, sorry, let's back up. Not in the charge.
So it's the next turn.
Next turn.
Everyone survives.
Next
It's
turn.
the next turn.
Everyone survives.
Yeah.
I've got a full 10. I've got up to 10 men here. One is engaged with like an assault unit that's normal squad, and one's against like a beat stick, and it comes to my turn to activate. Am I going to activate against a unit that I can't really hurt to try to mitigate that damage that the Thunderhammers are going to churn out? Or
potentially kill off.
to potentially, to potentially get those guys off me and maybe kill it against a 2-up armor save? Or am I going to use these guys with their weapons and their power fists and try to get this assault unit out of the way so that I don't have to worry about them anymore and just take the licks here and then try to fall back?
Right. So there's a lot of strategy that goes on, a lot of picking and choosing. And then just to clarify one more time, it's not like if you're not activating a full combat. You're activating your unit. And then if I want to, I don't need to fight that fight back. I could either fight that fight back on my end, or I could go to somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm not taking any more damage from that particular fight. I'm hopping over here to mitigate the damage there, or in terms of the offensive player, I've done my damage here. I'm doing my damage over here.
Right. So, 2s.
Oh man. Okay, so I'm super excited about this because they specifically mentioned my boy Swarmlord. I've been running Swarmlord in my Tyranids since since 5th edition, like early 5th edition, and it's always been killing me that 3s. You're only hitting on 3s with this dude with 4 arms and a crazy high initiative, a sword on his head, and a mouthful of teeth. His friggin' bone nipples have spikes on them, man. This guy was hitting on 3s. Now he's hitting on 2s. Oh, that feels so good. That feels so good. And I can't wait to see, I mean, we have Gilliman, but we're also probably going to see some really hardcore, like assault models, like probably Karen and some others who are going to be hitting on 2s. And that's going to be so crazy because that means we've always had these like close combat monsters, but now we're going to see a lot of them go from like scary to just like nightmarish.
Yeah, and it's going to be fantastic because again, back to the unit profiles, we have fixed ballistic skill and weapon skill, which means tactical Marines, they have a weapon skill of a 3+, which means when they're punching people, they're hitting on 3s, and then you're never going to have this whole like scenario of it's going to be, I'm only going to be hitting you on 4s.
Or 6s.
You know, or in other cases, like against a Demon Prince, I'm hitting you on 5s.
Yeah.
You know, like my prowess is still there, and I'm still doing what I'm trained to do.
I bet anyone who's playing Imperial Knights is probably also really pumped because that hitting on 4-ups against a lot of things kind of sucked.
Chainsaw the size of a Buick.
When you could pretty much just kneel down and drop the chainsword and kill half of the unit. But it's going to be really exciting to see who gets like weapon skill, ballistic skill, all that kind of stuff, how that works in combat, who ends up being these melee just super units, and who ends up, not so much.
And obviously the melee super units, that's if they get into melee. Right?
Yeah, they have to, and as they said in a lot of their articles, they're talking about how much just devastation's happening on the board. And just to hit very quickly on the game time, they say that the games are going to be going so much faster. So that means we're probably going to be taking models off the table like crazy.
Yeah. So don't get mad if your very nice, important models that usually would last all game die turn 1.
Yeah.
It happens.
And it's probably, with all the changes to the rules, it's probably going to have been your fault because you didn't, you weren't.
It's going to be more your fault than what the opponent did.
Yeah, more reactive game, more push-pull kind of situation, whereas as there are some games where you felt like you were playing solitaire, except solitaire where you were removing all of your cards.
And again, with the fix to hit rolls, that throws out another chart.
Yeah.
That's out of here. We're not going to reference it anymore. Who cares?
So one other new crazy thing that's coming, last point, melee weapon profiles.
So melee weapons have always had, just like every weapon's had their own profile, but the ability to get a little more in depth, just like with the shooting weapons, the ability to have weapons that beyond just being good at, okay, I'm good at taking out vehicles. That's what we used to have, was these could kill vehicles, these could go through like good armor, and these put out are just for kind of putting out wounds, right? And now we're going to be able to see things that are like, this is for dealing with hordes, this is for dealing with things with multiple wounds, this is for dealing with things with tons of wounds.
Right, like if you swing a hammer, is it going to just hit one guy, or is it possibly
Am I going to
3 or 4 guys?
Am I going to see chain swords with APs?
Yeah.
Am I going to see that?
Maybe that eviscerator chainsword might.
Man, that's going to be really good, because they've made it very clear that they're updating all of the profiles for the weapons, because like bolt gun, with the exception of the getting rid of the AP, stayed relatively the same. I really hope that they address, like, because the biggest disparity for like Space Marine players that they got like a nitpicky thing was that, the close combat weapon and a chainsaw. It's like, I can take a chainsword in my as a war gear option, but it's the same as a close combat weapon in 7th and 6th.
Like using your bolter as a club.
Yeah, or using my fist. But a chainsword is this big whirling blades that's supposed to cut through armor and shred things. Maybe it's going to be different, which I really hope so, because the Salt Marines all have that. And I kind of want to segue again and bring in an example, probably a rather extreme example, is that the new, in Age of Sigmar, they have chainsword-like weapon introduced.
Oh, that's right.
The Aether Saw, which looks like a chainsword.
It's a chainsword.
And it does really well in combat.
Actually, it looks a little more like a chain fist. But,
well, yeah.
Still.
Yeah, well, it's like this kind of chain, like a saw, but it's got, it's a chainsword.
But it's a chain-esque weapon that cuts through.
Yeah,
That could be used as a sword.
But that's also a sword. But so I wonder if like that's them experimenting with like how chainswords could be.
Oh yeah.
But
then again, remember, chainswords are on a lot of things, so they can't make them too good.
They can't make them too good. But the fact that it's so differentiated from my basic close combat weapon, or I can just take a chainsword, as it is in 7th, but it doesn't really do anything outside of looking cool.
Yeah, I just modeled
which
one
hurts,
on,
which feels
on my Raven Wing, just because it looked awesome.
So basically, fight phase, 2s, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, 2s, just 2s.
Just 2s.
I can hit on I can do my thing, because my unit's prowess is at. Again, it's like you wake up in a crater, because it's war all the time. Everybody knows how to fight. This whole like dumb chart of, I'm only going to be hitting at most on 3s, never better than 3s, or never worse than 5s or 6s, depending on certain circumstances. Everybody has their thing. Fire warriors are screwed, because they're probably going to be hitting on 6s, because they're really good at shooting, and their melee be damned.
Yeah.
All right, well, that about wraps up. You guys got any other type of thoughts?
Hey,
No,
this has been
he
Wartorn
doesn't.
Creative. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And hey, let us know what you think about the fight sub phase. We'd love to hear what you think. You killed my Skitarii.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, fucking get charged on, man.